Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from the Philadelphia law offices of Fox Rothschild. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Jeff Mack, Newmark Knight Frank, Ethan Milrod, go-to Drew Hanlon, Peter Snelling, Merrill Lynch, Peter Carriacotis, Emmanuel Risk Solutions, and Joe Tredinick from Republic Bank. We have a great lineup of guests for you on our show today. Jeff, will you please give us the rundown?
Sure, happy to, Herb. We have Dr. Lou Bevilacqua, CEO and President of Sanare today. John Fidler is the managing director of retained search for Fidato Partners. Molly Shepard, founder and CEO of The Leader's Edge, Leaders by Design. And John Fuller is a partner at Fox Rothschild.
Let's get to know our first guest, Dr. Lou Bevilacqua, CEO and President of Sanare. Dr. Bevilacqua, what is Sanare? What are you guys doing?
Sanare today means to heal in Italian, and we help people thrive. So people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, addictions come to us, and we help them get through.
Wow. Where are you from originally?
Upper Darby and Broomall area.
Upper Darby, Broomall area. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
One older sister.
One older sister. Okay. Jeffrey.
So, Lou, growing up at home, what was going on at home ages 8 to 14 for you?
I was living up in Broomall, and my dad, who was a master plumber and builder, we had just built a McMansion up in Broomall, but then right around 13 or so, my dad became disabled, and we moved back to Upper Darby.
Wow, what that must have had an effect on you. What kind of effect did that have on you? And how young were you when your dad became disabled?
I was right around 13, and what happened is I tended to not see him as much because he was pretty much laying in bed a lot of times, struggling with chronic pain.
So what effect did that have on the family dynamics?
In some ways, it pulled my mom and I to be a lot more close. We spent a lot more time talking and hanging out.
Mm-hmm. So you drew your mom and you to be a lot more close, and your dad was ill and you didn't see him as much, and you moved from a really fancy dancy neighborhood and house to not so fancy of a one. All right. Let's see. Drew, what are you thinking?
Lou, I was just curious. You spoke a little bit about Father Burbine in the green room. Can you tell us how he inspired you?
Yeah, well, originally I wanted to be an accountant, and after taking an accounting course, realized that that was not what I wanted to do. And Father Burbine and I were pretty close, and he often told me that people relate very well to me and suggested I go into the psychology field.
And how has that impacted your leadership style today?
Well, it's helped me in the sense of trying to work with individuals and always try to bring them together and try to get the most out of people.
And when you're faced with tough decisions, what do you hear Father Burbine whispering in your ear?
Take a breath. Just notice what's going on. Try to really assess the situation. Use the supports around you to get some good input and make the best decision possible.
Wait a minute. Wait. Isn't that what you do? Isn't that what you do is provide support and provide role modeling for others that you sort of picked up from this fella?
Yes, very much so.
Uh-huh. Joe?
Yeah, Lou, in the green room we talked about the influence of your grandfather and how he was there for you. Tell us how that influenced you today.
Tremendously. So one of the things my grandfather always told me was try not to work for anybody but yourself. And he taught me how to have my own landscaping business, and was always there for me in terms of wherever I was, he tended to be there. I was a bowler in high school and on the travel team and on the school team, and he was there at practices, and in fact is in one of the yearbook pictures with the team.
So you also told us as a bowler you set a league-high record of average. What drove you there? Was it your grandfather that helped drive that out of you? Or
absolutely. Yeah, he was always trying to make sure that I was the best at whatever I pursued, and provided a lot of drive for me.
What did that mean to look over even at practice and see your grandfather standing there?
It was awesome. I mean, it was cool to know that somebody, all of my family always supported me and cared about me, but to have somebody right there in the flesh.
Do you think your grandfather was like secretly stepping up and acting as your father figure there?
In many ways, he was also a father figure to me, for sure.
Pete?
Dr. Lou, in the green room, I asked you a question about when you were younger, what crisis or catastrophe helped shape you. And can you share with the listening audience what your response to that question was?
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned to believe in life is that there really are no catastrophes. A lot of this is perception and how we see things in life. And if we notice things that are happening in our life that aren't going so well and we categorize them as catastrophes, that tends to keep us stuck. So one of the things that I often try to do is help people thrive. And one of the ways to do that is to recognize that you are capable of doing things and you are okay, and getting people to get to that point.
And what or who shaped you at an early age to kind of take that philosophy in life?
I think many people have helped me to get to that point, but most importantly, it was as a young adult when I started a program called the LIGHT program, and it's an intensive outpatient program, which is what we do at Sanare today. It's really looking at people who are coming in feeling hopeless, suicidal, really at the bottom of how their life has ever gotten to, and within 2 to 3 weeks, getting them to a point of thriving and recognizing that they can really love life again and see that transformation.
You worked directly with these people. How old were you when this was occurring?
I was late 20s.
And you saw
30s.
You really could make a difference, didn't you?
Absolutely. Much more than just the individual work with somebody once a week kind of thing. This is where you see people 4 days a week, and you're constantly reinforcing the strategies and progress.
Your understanding of how you could have a direct effect on somebody and a profound effect on an individual really was the basis for your founding this business, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Very much so.
Who's got the next question?
So this work is your career, but it's really much more to you than that, isn't it? Is this
absolutely. It's a
calling,
passion.
Passion?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Well, one of the things that I often try to talk with my staff about is kind of my vision. And it's not just about the company. It's more of a life philosophy. I would love to be able to create a world where the vast majority of us wake up every day feeling like we're okay, like we're going to be able to get through this day and do it well.
Well, you and your team are saving lives. How does that feel?
Oh, wonderful. There's no price tag on that.
You Ethan?
Has anybody that you've ever affected come back and spoke to you?
Oh, fortunately, yes. Many people have come back, whether it's sending me emails, phone calls, letters. What
does that mean to you when they come back? What?
It's tremendous validation. It's also a wonderful blessing to know that you can have an impact on somebody's life.
Dr. Lou, what do you think your grandfather would say if he was watching you from the sidelines every day?
Just that he's very proud of me, and I can feel him giving me a hug right now.
What role does spirituality play in your development and your work?
Tremendous amount. I'm very devoted to a faith of Catholic, and I believe that because I have God in my side, that that's really the essence of why there's no catastrophes in life.
What was that again? Why are there no catastrophes in life?
Because I have God with me, and I believe that with His support, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
You mentioned in the green room, Lou, that you have 3 daughters.
Yes.
What have you learned from your girls?
Patience, that life is always ever changing, and that it's important to have fun.
And you're passionate about what you do. How do you hire?
It's hard to hire. That's probably my biggest struggle because I'm very picky with who comes into the team. I'm looking for people who are energetic, who want to think outside the box, and who are dedicated to helping people.
So this business is a passion.
Very much.
It also happens to be a business.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate in that I don't feel like I ever go to work. I just get up and do the things that I love.
Wait. How many offices do you have, and how large or how small is the team?
So we opened in actually February of 2016, so we just hit a 4-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And right now we have about 9 locations and about 20 people working in the staff.
And you think that's fun and games?
It's a joy. It's a fun to get up every day knowing that I'm going to do things that make me feel good.
Well, why is that a joy?
Because I get to see not only clients who are making changes in their life and learning to thrive, but also a team of professionals who are dedicated to the things that they do, and I love watching them thrive as well, which is really important.
Yeah, but how about all the rotten parts of business? The finance, this is going wrong, the lights aren't working, the IT's no good, there's a lawsuit sitting here, all the rotten stuff that happens.
That's all part of life. It's all part of our perception and what we make of it. And, you know, if I get stuck looking at all the different things that create problems in my life, then I'm not going to get too far.
Wait a minute, that's exactly what you're doing for a living. I mean, the philosophy that you're living is the philosophy that you're trying to help others appreciate.
True.
Well, what's the website address of this organization?
SanareToday.com.
How do you spell that?
S as in Sam, A, N as in Nancy, A-R-E, today.com.
We've been speaking with Dr. Lou Bevilacqua, CEO and President of Sanare, and we'll be back in a moment right after this break. Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce John Fidler, who's the Managing Director, Retained Search at an organization known as Fidato Partners. John, what is Fidato Partners, and what are you doing there?
We are a boutique staff augmentation consulting and recruiting firm focused on accounting and finance, risk, and IT professionals, and I run our Retained Search practice.
All right. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Reading, Pennsylvania.
How many brothers and sisters?
I am one of one, an only child.
What makes an only child special?
So as an only child, I learned how to do for myself. If I didn't have others around me, I learned how to create. I learned how to keep myself entertained.
Give us an example of how you kept yourself entertained as a kid.
So when I was up in my bedroom as a young kid, sitting there, bored, nothing to do, I would pick up my stuffed animals. I'd start doing a little show. I'd be the director. I'd be one of the actors. The stuffed animals would be the actors. We put on great performances up in my room.
Mm-hmm. Ethan?
John, can you remember the first real performance that you put on?
Yes.
How young were you?
So I was 8 years old. And I starred in my second grade play. And I can't remember the name of the play, but my character's name was Mr. McNicholas. And he was the cheery mailman who was going around to everybody bringing them gifts and trying to make them happy at Christmas time.
How did performing as Mr. McNicholas make you feel?
It made me feel great. I loved it.
And what effect did you think that it had on you in life?
Well, I stuck with theater for a long time. I loved being up on stage. I loved performing for people.
Do you find that today that you perform for people at all?
Well, I'm real in what I do, but yes, there's a lot of elements of performing.
It must have given you a supreme sense of confidence.
Yes.
How else did it affect you?
Well, it taught me how to collaborate. It taught me how to appreciate diversity. It taught me how to be creative and keep that creativity in everything that I do.
Mm-hmm. Joe?
So certainly the theater's been a big part of your life. Who influenced you in the theater? Who were your influencers?
Well, the two big influencers, one was a woman named Lynn Morrow, who passed away a long time ago, but she ran the theater department at Albright College, and she directed our spring musicals in high school.
And how did they influence you?
So she taught me what it meant to be an actor. She gave me the discipline of the craft. She gave me the fun side of the craft. And after 3 years of doing shows with her, I knew I wanted to go to school to do it and be a professional actor.
Wasn't there somebody else that influenced you as well?
Yeah, the other gentleman that influenced me, his name was Michael Collins. He ran the theater department at Bloomsburg University. Wonderful man, mentored me for 4 years and got me ready to go out into the world.
What did he do to you?
He was the director of the theater department, directed me in shows.
How did he affect you?
He was my mentor.
How? What?
So he taught me what it meant to be an actor. He taught me what it meant to push myself, to be good at what I'm doing.
What chunk of that do you bring to work every day as retained search of Fidato partners?
Well, it's a practice where if I'm not driving, if I'm not pushing, it doesn't go anywhere.
Just wanted to make sure I understood. Pete?
John, in the green room, you talked to us about some of the athletics that you were able to play as a young man.
Yes.
One of those athletics was soccer. Can you tell us what position, or the listening audience, what position you played at soccer?
Yeah, so for most of the time I played left fullback.
Okay, so give us a little bit of an idea of what left fullback is.
Yeah, so I was a midfielder, so I played some defense, I played some offense, coordinated a lot in the middle of the field.
So the middle of the field between the offense and the defense.
That's right.
So was there a lot of communication involved in order to get that ball on one side or the other?
Communicating all the time.
All the time. So tell us how you think that shows up today as a communicator between two sides and what you do.
Yeah, as a recruiter, I'm communicating with the client, I'm communicating with the candidate, and I'm the sort of the liaison.
Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And one of the other loves you said you had was cross-country running. Can you just explain to the listening audience a little bit about what being a cross-country runner and that discipline does for how you show up each day at what you do?
Well, it's just pushing yourself. It's going out there, and even when you're tired, just continuing to push and push until you get across the finish line.
Peter?
John, you were a leading man at age 8. When did you realize that you were good at being in charge, and how does that affect what you're doing today?
Well, I think I realized I was good at being in charge even before I was age 8, for better or for worse.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so whenever we'd go out and play, little kids, the friends in the neighborhood, the activities that we do, I loved coordinating. I loved leading. I loved getting us together to play games, to play sports.
Was that true all throughout your youth and your childhood, etc.?
Yeah.
So you were organizing all the other kids as a kid?
Yeah.
Boy, it's really in your blood. Jeffrey?
So, John, you're kind of directing a cast now within Fidato with your client base. How do you balance your ego when you want to take the lead as the lead in the cast or the second person, and how do you deliver that way?
Yeah, well, it's a constant balancing act. You need to know when to push and when to back off. There are some clients you need a handhold. There are some that you just you need to just back off and let them do their thing, and you learn over time how to find that balance. But yeah, my beginnings in the theater certainly helped me in that regard.
Drew?
John, tell us about Mom and Dad.
So my dad, very early on, he was a radio guy. And my mother was a singer. She sang in a choir in Reading. So I had theater and performing in my blood from, before I was born.
And who are you more like, Mom or Dad?
I'm more like Dad.
Why so?
Gregarious, big personality, loves meeting people, loves to be in charge.
And what do you hear Dad whispering in your ear every day?
Keep going. Keep pushing.
And when you were in the theater, throughout, your young life, did Mom and Dad come watch you?
Oh, every show.
And what did that mean to be on stage and look out and see Mom and Dad there?
It was everything.
It was
everything. They were the ones that was pushing me to do it. They were proud of me. I loved for them to be there at my performances.
You love for them being at your performances. So tell me how all that stuff's showing up nowadays in business.
Well, I love to bring people to the table. I love to make matches. I love to bring candidates to clients. I love to place them.
What do you mean you love to make matches? I thought the key was if an employer gives you a gig, you just give them somebody, and that's the end of the story.
Oh, no. No, there's a lot more to it than that.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, so it's not just a matter of throwing a good resume over the fence and hoping it lands. You go out to market. You go through a very extensive search process. It's not just about finding good candidates. It's about finding the best candidates on the market for the open position.
Is it that you look for perfection? Is it that nothing's ever good enough? Is it the fact that you don't like sleeping? What's going on?
Well, I don't sleep as much as I'd like to, but no, I mean it is about finding. I don't know if there's anything as such thing as a perfect candidate, but there is the best match, and that's always what I'm looking for.
Jeff?
So we're always continuing to learn today. I'm sure you're continuing to learn in what you're doing. You have 3 sons. What have you learned from your boys?
I have 2 sons.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 sons.
No, that's okay. We're talking about having a third. So 10 years old and 8 years old, yeah. I mean, my boys, they teach me. They've humbled me. They've taught me how to be patient. They've taught me that it's more than just me. Growing up as an only child, it was me. Now I have more than just me.
So you have two sons, and you were growing. So what have you learned from brothers that's helped you grow?
Brothers take care of one another.
What are you talking about?
So one brother falls down, the other one's there to pick him up.
Is that the way your boys behave?
That's the way my boys behave.
What's the age difference there?
It's 15 months.
And wow, it's amazing for them to get along. So what's that have to do with you building your business?
Well, when somebody in my practice or somebody in the firm is not doing as well, or is having a bad day, or is falling down, I know I need to be there to pick them up.
John, you have a lot of intensity and passion about what you do. How do you share that with your younger staff, and how do you pay that forward in your organization?
Well, I like to think I lead by example. I like to think I'm in every day. I'm working hard. I'm leading the practice. I'm a brand ambassador for the firm out in the market, and I want everybody that works for me and for the firm to do the same thing.
What makes you the most proud, John?
Just building a business that is successful and making clients happy.
Building a business that's successful and making clients happy. Give us some more detail about that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, now that's what makes me most proud from a business standpoint. But it's client comes to us and they have a search, and we work on it and we do a good job, and they're happy with the candidate. The candidate's happy. Client satisfaction. Just knowing that we did a good job on the search, and knowing that we're helping the reputation of the practice and the firm out in the market. That's everything.
So what do you do to relax when you're not? It sounds like you work hard. What do you do to relax?
I try not to work on the weekends. That doesn't usually happen, like most of us. But go home. I like to spend time with my kids. I have them in scouts. I like to do things with my wife and my boys on the weekends.
John, what's the website address for Fidato Partners?
FidatoPartners.com.
Give me the spelling of that.
So it's F as in Frank, I, D as in dog, A, T as in Tom, O, partners.com.
We've been speaking with John Fidler, Managing Director, Retained Search, Fidato Partners, here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce our guest, Molly Shepard, founder and CEO of the Leaders Edge Leaders by Design. Molly, what is the Leaders Edge Leaders by Design?
The Leaders Edge Leaders by Design is a leadership development consulting firm and executive coaching company that helps men and women achieve their career aspirations.
Mm-hmm. Where are you from originally?
Greenwich, Connecticut.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I'm one of four.
Where are you in the pecking order?
Number 2.
And Jeffrey?
So, Molly, how young were you when you started making money, and what created your first job?
I was 14 years old. I was a camp counselor. I had the choice of either going back to sleep camp for an 8th year or working.
And you chose to work as the camp counselor. How did you make that role your own, and what was the result for you?
I walked in it somewhat naive. I was taking care of 25 6-year-olds. I guess I grew to understand how much I, number one, loved children and still do, and 2, watching the dynamics between these kids, especially the boys and the girls.
Wait. You're 14 years old. They're 6. There's 25 of them. This is the first time you do it, and you were watching the dynamics? What are you talking about?
As much as I could, I put them on kind of a free period, whether it was eating snack or eating lunch or just relaxing.
Weren't they driving you crazy?
Yes.
But you were watching the dynamics.
I was watching.
What's that have to do with what you're doing nowadays?
And that's what I do.
What are you talking about?
I'm very interested in people's behaviors, their styles of leadership, the way they lead, motivate, inspire others.
What are you talking about?
Well, there are some leaders who are able to do that, and there are others who lead, motivate, and inspire their followers to perform, to achieve their career goals.
As opposed to?
as opposed to feeling isolated, desolate, and otherwise.
What was going on when you were this camp counselor? Did you begin to realize stuff, or what's showing up as a camp counselor? Has anything to do with what you're doing nowadays?
Well, there are those young children who are not included, and I made sure that they were and felt good about their day.
Did you feel not included at one point?
Always.
What are you talking about?
As kind of the second child with a star sister and a brother who was king, I was, I think, lost in the middle of all that.
Okay. Joe.
Yeah, so tell us about your siblings and how they influenced you.
Well, my older sister could do no wrong. She was quite spectacular in many ways. She was a singer, performer. She was a student, academic. There was no way I was going to be able to compete with her.
So how did that influence you? What path did that lead you down?
I just wasn't. I didn't try. I didn't try at academics. I didn't, try to be as popular as she was. I just kind of gave it up.
And in the green room, you told us you were a bit of a renegade. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as a result, when you kind of drop out, you're isolated and you're kind of labeled. Often incorrectly as a bad.
So you understand
apple.
Not only what it takes to lead, you understand about the team as well.
I do.
Ethan?
You mentioned earlier in the green room, Molly, that you wanted to show a free and independent spirit. How were some of the ways that you did that as a kid?
I think I did it naturally because I was obviously seen by my family and my friends as individualistic and different.
What were some of the things that you did as a child to be different?
Oh, everything. I dressed differently. I acted differently. I wasn't really included in the
So dressing groups. Differently and acting differently among the other kids, what effect did that have on you? How did they treat you, and how did that carry forward for you?
For a while, they thought I was funny, and after that, I think they thought I was more interesting.
Mo, I was just curious, being the renegade or the black sheep, were you ever bullied?
I was bullied.
And what impact did being bullied have on you?
Oh, I think it made me stronger, made me more resilient. It was only after we wrote a book called The Bully-Proof Workplace that I identified those incidents and began to understand and appreciate what they did for me.
And what advice would you give to a kid that might be a little bit of an outcast today?
Just have faith, understand that even if they're different or not included, that they're special. They have special gifts.
And how did being bullied impact your leadership style?
Well, I've never bullied any of the employees. I've run 2 companies and have been very careful to be an inclusive, supportive boss.
Earlier, you listened to my family story with great empathy, and I just realized what a wonderful listener you are. How did you adopt that skill? Where did you learn that? When did you learn that?
I think I learned it at a very young age. If you're not always included, then the option is to either leave or listen and observe. So I developed that habit very early on.
What habit?
Of listening.
Why?
Because I want to understand, and still do in my work, where people are coming from, what's important to them, what are their motivated strengths, helping them match that with their careers.
Would you share with us a little bit about the conversations with your best friend, your sister?
My younger sister.
Your younger sister.
Yes.
I have a younger sister who is suffering from multiple sclerosis, and we're quite close. She is the most optimistic, cheerful, lovely
what have you picked
person.
up from your sister that's helped you grow your business?
Because nothing could be as bad as dealing with that insidious disease. And to see her so strong.
And what's it have to do with building the business?
I haven't done that relationship, but I would imagine that on a bad day, nothing could be as bad as what my sister's dealing with.
Molly, we've talked about you feeling like a black sheep and isolated. I was curious what event in your life brought you to the point where you felt community, a sense of community and confidence to replace the self-narrative that you've been talking to yourself with.
I was raised by 2 parents who gave back to their community all the time. They were out every night. So I learned how to give back and how important that was and how good it made you feel, and I've given back all my life. Every extra moment I've had has been involved in a not-for-profit, a charitable organization, a cause of some sort. I've been honored for that, and it's...
So you broke through from that isolation. So I'm curious what it does for you when you get to watch one of your clients at the Leader's Edge break through. What does that do for you internally?
Oh, my heavens, to see somebody achieve a goal, to get promoted, to do better, to switch jobs and be successful is everything for me.
Why is that so important?
Because my life's work is to help people achieve their goals.
Molly's here today with her business partner and husband, Peter, and I'd like to ask Peter a question. Peter, what makes Molly special?
Well, Molly has broken through, if we're going to use that language. She is in the middle of the pecking order, but she's definitely the leader of her siblings. And she helps other women break through, especially in the bullying arena. And I think she shows them how to stand up for themselves. And she's very dedicated to more women in the workplace.
Molly, what have you learned from your partner and husband, Peter?
Oh, it's such fun working with somebody who's like-minded. He's a leadership development consultant as well, and he's patient and kind and very supportive with the executive men that he works with in helping them appreciate and understand the importance of inclusion.
Molly, what advice would you give to the young women listening audience that want to forge their own paths in life?
I think the biggest issue affecting women, and there are obviously many challenges, is self-confidence. And we are socialized at a very young age, and we could go into that forever, to put ourselves down instead of build ourselves up. And so to just remember how good they are and what they've achieved and how they've contributed, and not let others knock them down.
Mm-hmm. Peter, you talked earlier, about your conversation with Molly, and you were struck with what?
This deep empathy that she has for, the situations of women and how you've supported them all through your career.
Molly, why'd you go over to speak with him after our little break, after our green room? Why'd you pick Peter?
He shared with me that his sister who passed away had MS, and so that
we had a lot in common
yeah.
in our relationships with our sisters.
So what you're telling me is that what we're hearing is really authentic today. It's the real you.
It's the real me.
This is not public relations, but in fact, we know that it's the real you because you've been involved with all these nonprofit organizations giving both your time and money. This really is who you are.
While raising 4 children.
Oh, my gosh.
We're deeply authentic.
What's the website address for this organization?
The-leaders-edge.com.
Let me have that one more time.
The-leaders-edge.com.
We've been speaking with Molly Shepard, founder and CEO of The Leader's Edge, Leaders by Design, here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce John Fuller, partner at Fox Rothschild. John, what is Fox Rothschild?
Fox Rothschild is a 113-year-old Philadelphia law firm that's grown to over 950 attorneys in 27 offices around the country.
And where are you from originally?
Just outside of Philadelphia in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania.
And how many brothers and sisters?
An older brother and an older sister.
So you're the youngest of three. And Drew, why don't you give us a hand?
John, we learned you're a pretty competitive athlete. What was your favorite sport?
Lacrosse was my sport growing up.
And what position did you play?
I was a goalie.
And what's the characteristic traits of a goalie?
Well, early in my career was that I wasn't a very fast runner, so I got put there. But even when I could, I really enjoyed the role of being the sort of quarterback of the defense. You have a different perspective than everybody else on the field, and you're the one who has to tell them where to be.
Even though you joke about yourself, you actually became you played for a pretty high-level team.
We did. We always competed in state tournaments and things like that.
And what was were you the captain of the team?
I eventually became captain as I got older.
And what was your leadership style as the captain?
It's interesting. It's funny. When I was a younger player, you have to, as I said, sort of be the quarterback of the defense, and it took me a while to step into that role. Similarly, when I was captain, I hadn't been as vocal with my teammates, pushing them. But once I became captain, and I felt like it was my place to lead and to push people, I think I grew into that pretty well.
And how has quiet confidence helped you be a leader here at Fox Rothschild?
Yeah, well, it's true. We work in teams, obviously, of attorneys, and they range from senior partners down to first-year associates. And the skills, even in how you approach a legal problem, there are big, boisterous lawyers, and they're ones who do their homework. And when you get in front of the judge, you can talk quietly, but you talk with confidence and authority.
It seems like you let your results do the talking.
I think that's a nice way to put it. I appreciate that.
John, can you talk to us about your relationship with your father?
Yeah, my father, as we were saying before, actually passed away 18 years ago yesterday, and I was actually 18 at the time. For freshman in college. So to me, there's a lot there. He was a driving type. He was an accountant and a financial planner.
How did your father shape your adolescence as a young man?
He was the type. If you got a 99 on a test, he asked what you got wrong. I actually think my sister got 100, and he asked if there was any extra credit once. But
watching your demeanor, I feel like that motivated you. It wasn't a demotivator. So what about his influence motivated to pull the best out of you? And what do you take today from your experience with your father's life that you have show up at Fox Rothschild?
Yeah, well, he pushed, and I thank him for that, because there is work to be done, and you don't get any free meals in this world. I now have two very young children, and I think about him and how I push them and need to be there and supportive. But the pushing's important, and it's sort of a third rail when you talk about that. But you need to be pushed.
And what is it about your father's influence that shows up today in the work that you do?
He set his sights high. He didn't get a lot of support growing up, and graduated college early. Got his MBA in a year, so he could get out in the world. And to me, that's you can't just settle. You got to keep pushing.
John, you shared with us earlier that as a kid you had a love of words.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of people who end up lawyers. A lot of them, their parents tell them they were always arguing or fighting, and that's how they knew they were going to be a lawyer. For me, I wasn't that. I loved puns and limericks and poems and things like that, and for me, it was this manipulation and how you could change one little word or one little meaning and totally change how a sentence or a concept.
How do puns and limericks show up in law, though?
Well, not to say that we're not, that we're making anything up, but it's we work in a world of precedent. We work in a world of words that were written by judges who are people and they're law clerks and
language really shapes our world.
It
right?
does, and when you're trying to make an argument, you can put the emphasis in a genuine way and it's certain words that can change the whole outcome of a case.
Joe?
When you were an adolescent, what were you doing between 8 and 14 as far as making money?
I came along the way. I was very fortunate to be at a prep school in the main line, a full slate of extracurriculars, which came with all of its own pressures, and editor of the yearbook and all these things. You never could quite have enough.
So you talked about being a goalie lacrosse. So what other types of things in school were you doing that helped shape you today?
Yeah, working out, editor of the yearbook is, I think, my first foray in how meticulous you need to be. And once something goes to print, just like when we submit something to the court, there's no pulling it back.
So do you think, as an editor, you learned part of your passion with words, being editor is important?
Exactly, and noticing that not everybody will stay as long reading it and pore over it the same way you do. I think I knew I was a little bit different in and how much I appreciated it.
John, how early in life did your negotiating skills show up, and in what way?
Yeah, the funny, I think the reports are from before I can remember, from my mother. Always, I think I came up with a scheme in when I was 4 or 5 to sleep in my clothes because it would save time in the morning, and I thought that was really good. And also, it's this thing about consequences. My mom always will say that if tomorrow, when I was 4 years old, if someone's playing with the trucks, I'll play with the blocks. If someone's playing with the blocks, I'll use the Play-Doh. Think about lawyers thinking in terms of consequences.
When you had your friends over to your house, what role did your mom play in your neighborhood?
My mom, so to my dad, who was the pusher, my mom was Mrs. Claus. She always had, a big smile and fresh baked cookies, and I feel very fortunate because there was great balance. Everything in life is balance, and I see. These parts of me which are sort of talked about with my dad and always pushing forward, and my mom being happy with where you are in life and taking a moment. And
which one are you more like?
I gotta say, this sounds like a cop-out, but I'm a really happy mix of both. I think in work and everything, I certainly push like my dad, but can take my foot off the accelerator.
So what lights your fire every day? What do you love most about what you're doing?
It's an intellectual puzzle, right? People might have an image of what commercial litigators do from movies and TV, and it isn't slamming your hand, and getting judges riled up and ordering the court. It's these intellectual. We do a lot of work with directors and officers, and particularly when there's allegations that they may have breached their fiduciary duties to a company. The idea of a fiduciary duty is acting in the best interest of the company, which is a simple question, but every business is different. No business decision is simple, and the bigger they are, the more complex they are. The human components of who feels slighted and who made more money on the deal.
Peter?
John, your dad passed when you were 18 years old. You were still more or less a child. What do you hear, John the man, what do you hear your father telling you today?
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I feel him proud of me. Something being an attorney was something I was old enough to discuss with him as a career, and I know he thought that was great. It's both a blessing and a curse. So I feel a little like unfinished business. Because he wasn't there through this maturation. There is this idea of. Yeah.
And how does he live on in you raising your children? It's all the time in a million different ways. But it is this idea of I'm so fortunate to have these parents that were there and supportive, and I need to be there. But I also feel very comfortable that I can push them. They can have good manners even when my son's 3 years old. He can think about consequences and how your life you make these decisions in life and they affect your whole life.
John, in the green room, you talked to us about a class trip that you went on, and it had an unintended consequence. Can you give us, the listening audience, a little bit of an insight on that story?
Yeah, so I guess it was 6th or 7th grade, and they send the whole class to West Virginia to go camping for a week. And our year had unprecedented rainstorms. I remember we were sleeping in a cave. They woke us up in the middle of the night because the mouth of the entrance of the cave was up to neck height for us, full of water. We had to get out. So you could sense that everybody was scared, even the teachers. And I think you take away from that you can't control the weather, but you can control who's around you when things get bad.
You mentioned earlier when we were speaking in the green room that you felt you needed to earn your place. You are not the kind of guy to take shortcuts. You're the guy that puts the pedal to the metal, like sleeping in your clothes as a kid, because you want to be efficient and effective. Tell me more about this wanting to earn your place, and how's that benefit your clients with your legal?
Yeah, no, I think, and part of it, talking with all of you guys, it's part of this from my dad, right? Like, there's this unfinished business. There's always something next. And I think in terms of clients, we don't rest on our laurels, right? We've amassed collectively a lot of knowledge and know-how, but every case is different. Every dynamic is different in terms of a board of directors or those they have disputes with. So you can't stop. You have to. Each client is a new person to impress, a new place to earn, and you got to work for it.
So you really believe? Yeah, you got to work for it. You got to really earn your place, and you don't. As opposed to being the guy that's sitting up front and pounding your chest, you're able to play a variety of different roles. You've been the captain, as well as you've learned that sometimes you got to take a back seat. What's the website address of your organization?
It's foxrothschild.com.
How do you spell that?
FOXROTHSCHILD.
FoxRothschild.com. John Fuller, partner of Fox Rothschild. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown of who else we've had the opportunity of hanging out with today, please?
Yeah, what a great show. Herb, Dr. Lou Bevilacqua, CEO and President of Sanare Today. John Fidler, Managing Director, Retained Search for Fidato Partners. Molly Shepard, Founder and CEO, The Leader's Edge, Leaders by Design. And John Fuller, Partner, Fox Rothschild.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack, Newmark Knight Frank, Ethan Milrod, Go-To, Drew Hanlon, Peter Snelling, Merrill Lynch, Peter Karyakotis, Emmanuel Risk Solutions, and Joe
Tredinnick
from Republic Bank for giving me a hand structuring our questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. And don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.